Welcome to Daily Variety, your daily dose of news and analysis for entertainment industry insiders. It's Wednesday, August 5th, 2026. I'm your host, Cynthia Littleton. I am co-editor-in-chief of Variety alongside Ramin Satuda. I'm in LA, he's in New York, and Variety has reporters around the world covering the business of entertainment. On today's episode, Variety's Todd Spangler brings us up to speed on the latest developments in the Paramount-Warner Brothers Discovery merger saga. In the last 24 hours, David Ellison made his case to the public in an op-ed in the New York Times. Meanwhile, a federal judge set the date of March 2nd of next year for the antitrust trial that will be waged by 12 state attorney generals to stop the Parabros nuptials. Spangler puts it all in context for us, and it basically boils down to looking like a very long fight for Team Ellison. But before we get to that, here are a few headlines just in this morning that you need to know. Disney reported strong quarterly earnings before the bell this morning. CEO Josh D'Amaro sounded remarkably comfortable and confident in his remarks and the questions he fielded about the future of the company. The newly appointed CEO laid out a clear vision for what he sees as the company's big growth drivers: streaming and parks and experiences. D'Amaro's was pressed about whether Disney had really done the math on direct-to-consumer streaming and if the numbers show that model will pay off bigger in the long run than the company's traditional business of producing movies and TV shows for sale to outside buyers. D'Amaro was clear that there's no going back to a licensing model. One very inside baseball thing that longtime listeners of Disney earnings calls might have noticed: the intrepid Lightshed analyst Rich Greenfield seems to be out of the wilderness with the Mouse House's new regime. It was contentious for a while, starting about 10 years ago, when Greenfield became very bearish on ESPN's prospects as a linear channel. D'Amaro, in his remarks, nodded to the fact that Disney is looking to launch free ad-supported streaming channels. He sees them as a promotional effort to lure more subscribers to Disney Plus and Hulu, and for the Mouse House to gain more streaming ad inventory. Disney has also set a deal with Tick-Tock to generate more short-form, fan-made, authorized content related to Disney brands and characters. 3, 2, 1. Disney also disclosed that they are all sold out of Super Bowl inventory some 6 months before the big game. The 2027 Super Bowl will air on ESPN for the first time ever and on ABC for the first time since 2006. While Disney was announcing earnings, Netflix co-CEO Ted Sarandos was on the other side of the world meeting with India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Sarandos was in town to unveil the Netflix India Storytelling Initiative. The streaming giant is promising to invest in production infrastructure as well as training and scholarships for creatives and artisans. All of these stories and so much more can be found on Variety.com right now. And now it's time for conversations with Variety journalists about news and trends in show business. Variety business editor Todd Spangler joins us to help sort out where things stand for Paramount and Warner Brothers Discovery. After Todd and I spoke, the federal judge overseeing the antitrust case set a trial date of March 2nd through March 19th. That is not what Paramount wanted to hear. In David Ellison's zeal to snare Warner Brothers Discovery away from Netflix earlier this year, Paramount agreed to pay Warner Brothers Discovery shareholders a ticking fee of $7 million a day if the deal was not completed by September 30th. This is all becoming as much of an epic quest as that other story that Christopher Nolan is telling right now on the big screen for a rival studio. Todd Spangler, thanks for joining me, and thank you for working hard while I took 2 weeks of blissful vacation. You and Gene Mattis and others on our staff were kept super busy by Paramount and Warner Brothers and 12 state attorney generals and everything in between.
It's been a busy time.
All right, Todd, so for somebody who was mostly off the grid for 2 weeks, catch me up in terms of where we stand with the legal process that has at least temporarily blocked them from moving forward on this merger.
Well, Paramount agreed to pause the merger. That's because they didn't want the case to go to an injunction hearing, which would have just dragged it on before, it was looking very likely that this would go to a full trial.
Right.
So
They got the temporary injunction, but
Mhm.
that Paramount made the legal calculation. Let's go for broke and
Yeah.
push for an early. Sorry.
So they accelerated it. And so last Friday, Paramount said, "Hey, we would like a November trial date because time is of the essence, and they're going to start paying Warner Brothers Discovery shareholders $7 million a day starting October 1st for every day that the deal doesn't close. So they want this done sooner rather than later. So the 12 states and WGA, which is also suing them in an antitrust case, they asked for an April 2027 court date.
Do you think that any of this was on even the most extreme risk scenario when David Ellison and Jerry Cardinal and all the financial whizzes around him, when they agreed to that ticking fee? Do you think that this is just catching them very flat-footed in terms of the power that the state AGs have brought to the bear?
They were surprised. They made a miscalculation. They thought the states had no case. They still think the states have no case, by the way. But the states have been flexing. The state attorneys general have been stepping up to take on these cases where the DOJ has basically said, no problem, let it go through. So that's where we are right now. And so what that's done is made this look like a very politicized process. The 12 state AGs, they're all Democratic attorneys general. So it looks like a red versus blue kind of situation.
It's just an example where that polarizing politics just seeps into every aspect of our world. Well, of course, the David Ellison headline of Tuesday morning was he published an op-ed in the New York Times. He calls out the politics involved here, and in his assessment, the rub comes down to CNN, that this is a flashpoint and a symbolic asset, that people are concerned that he might be inclined to take it to a real rightward tilt, and that would be a big change for CNN and also for the news business. Let me ask you more specifically about the fallout from this limbo period created by the temporary injunction. What are you hearing inside Paramount? What are you hearing inside Warner Brothers?
The message from Ellison and other managers at both companies is, hey, it's business as usual. We have to continue to serve our customers, our partners, et cetera, while this uncertainty is hanging over our heads. So, there's some runway here. Warner Brothers is free to make, generally speaking, unless it's a really material kind of a deal. The Warner Brothers folks are able to make deals and renewals and things through the end of 2028 without any consultation with Paramount. And of course, as you know, before a merger, they're not allowed to do any sort of integration planning or collaboration.
They can't completely open the books up.
Yeah. So, there's a little bit of runway, but yes, people are uncertain about when is this going to be resolved? How many people are going to lose their jobs? And so long range strategic planning, you got to think, is really on hold.
I'm also curious how this is going to affect personnel, like key players like Casey Bloys, who there's a big question, will he or won't he? Will he stick with HBO? This story, it just will not quit.
We have a story that we're going to be running in the magazine, taking a look at what is David Ellison's breaking point. In other words, what is it going to take to really kill this deal? And, we walked through a couple different scenarios, but I think he's going to the mat. He's going to take this as far in the courts as he can because he's invested so much time and money in this. And he really thinks it's existential for Paramount to unite with Warner Brothers Discovery. That was one of the points he made in his op-ed in the New York Times, is that this is necessary for both companies to compete with the big tech players and the big streamers like Netflix. So he's going to exhaust all of his options. And if that means it costs a couple billion more to get it through, then that's what it's going to take. But I think we're going to see a long drawn out process here.
Todd, what do you think the rationale behind doing the op-ed today was? Who do you think was the prime target? Was he talking to the state AGs? Was he talking to the judge? Was he talking to the general public?
He's trying to make a case in the court of public opinion. I think he's laying the groundwork for an appeal here to say the state AG's case misses the point, and if they do lose in that case, they're going to come back hard and say, look, we do not have any kind of stronghold on cable or movies. So they're really going to try to make that case. David Ellison, I think he feels like he's been misunderstood, and he feels like the narrative does not reflect his understanding of what's going on. He thinks it really is about CNN, and his point is like, look, trust me, I'm not going to interfere with their journalistic independence. Meanwhile, he didn't point out what he's done at CBS News, which is install Barry Weiss.
This is playing out on social media and online, and maybe it will play out in a courtroom. Do you think at this stage, is there any hope of reaching a settlement?
We talked to several observers, legal experts, and most of them said we don't see a path to a settlement. Each side is really entrenched in their positions and isn't willing to give an inch. But it does seem like the states have some leverage here, and we'll see what sort of pain this causes David Ellison in terms of what he might be willing to concede.
Well, it's interesting, too. We're seeing it would seem like an effort maybe to get some friendly voices out there. Ari Emanuel, the leader of WME, and TKO, very influential voice in town. He has been on CNBC talking about how he is supporting the Paramount-Warner Brothers deal, saying that both of these companies do need each other, and despite the noise out there, that they will be better together. It's an interesting position for him to take. I finally got the chance to read the full complaint filed by the Blue Dozen, as we might call them, the state AGs, and there was a lot of head scratching on the focus on blockbuster movies and the focus on cable television. But clearly that's where that the state AGs can make the case that they have too much concentration, that this is running afoul of antitrust policy and precedent. And why didn't they talk about streaming? Well, the latest Nielsen gauge measure, which is the big picture of who's watching what platforms, the latest numbers for May show YouTube once again at the top, 13.8%. with a big lead over its next competitor, which is Netflix at 8%. And then you go down several notches. You have Paramount Plus at 2.3% and Warner Brothers Discovery at 1.5%, which I think is a surprisingly small amount. So even though streaming is the future and is one of the things that people are concerned about with price and control and the power of their commissions in the creative community, together it barely adds up to 5% of the viewing market. So that explains why the focus is on the area where they can make the case that there's too much concentration, because in essence, this boils down to an antitrust argument, despite all of the other elements that we've been talking about.
And Paramount's position, and David Ellison raised this, was like, look, you're ignoring the reality. You're not taking a holistic view of the entertainment business. But legally speaking, that doesn't hold water. You cannot argue that benefits in competition in an adjacent market would excuse market concentration in other areas.
If these were more normal circumstances and not quite so politically charged, the obvious thing would be for Paramount to say, okay, we'll sell off X% of the basic cable channels that we're going to buy, because those basic cable channels in the Discovery portfolio, in the old Turner portfolio, those are not the future of the business. Even if they have assets that can be harvested, those are not the future.
That could be one part of a settlement, but then you still have the allegations of concentration in the theatrical distribution market. So it would need to be two-pronged in terms of what they agree to.
Wow. Again, this is uncharted waters here for politics, media M&A. Todd, thank you as always for rising early every day and getting the news out there. We so appreciate it. As we close out today's episode, here's a few things we're watching for. Thursday morning will be Earnings Palooza. Todd Spangler and the rest of Variety's hardworking business team will be at it early, so keep your eye on Variety.com for all the news. This coming Sunday, August 9th, rev your engines for NASCAR Americana on USA Sports. The 3-part docuseries hails from Peyton Manning's Omaha Productions. The series examines how the Auto Racing League has influenced our culture. We love to hear from our listeners, so please send thoughts, gripes, and other feedback about Daily Variety to podcasts@variety.com. Before we go, congrats to Stephanie Yu. She's been promoted to General Counsel and Executive Vice President of Business and Legal Affairs for Sony Music. She reports to the big boss, Rob Stringer, and Kevin Kelleher, who is COO of Sony Music. Yu has been with Sony Music since 2011. Thanks for listening. This episode was written and reported by me, Cynthia Littleton, with contributions from Todd Spangler. Sticks, Nicks, Hick Picks. Please leave us a review at the podcast platform of your choice, and don't forget to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Daily Variety.